Welcome to Left Coast Live. It is Thursday, November 21st, 2024. I am your host, Dieter McBusiness, joined as always by Stat Pat, Stateless Patriot. And today we have special guest Connor, the progressive American. He has joined us quite a few times in the past, and we are interested to hear about his opinions on the election, as well as what to expect from Trump 47. But Stat Pat, did you have anything you wanted to start us off with, or should we go right to Connor?
Nothing in particular. I'm just kind of glad that Matt Gaetz was given the boot. Like it's kind of poetic in a way. He immediately resigned like the day of the announcement that he was tapped for Attorney General, and now that seat's empty. And it turns out he has to step away from the position to begin with, and and I guess just a couple hours ago, Donald Trump actually tapped a new pick for Attorney General. The Attorney General of Florida, her name escapes me at the moment, but she helped him.
Right?
Bondi, yeah.
She helped him with clearing up scandals regarding Trump University, and the case that was revolving around that whole thing. She helped to drop it. So it's just another Trump sycophant. You know, it's really less about who's like a party loyalist or whatever, or it's more about like who's going
just
to
about him.
be a sip for Trump. Yeah, it's just
it's a king. It's a king within a power structure.
Yeah.
Connor, do you think that the Gaetz proposal was just a ploy to like get the next person to line up, so they went with someone extreme so that they could say they dismissed at least one of his proposals?
I mean, that's certainly a possibility. It's kind of hard to tell. Like, the problem with any attempt to analyze Trump is you don't want to underestimate the craziness and the cruelty of what he does, but you also don't want to overplay it to the point where you actually miss the simplest message, which is he doesn't care. I mean, This is the guy when he was president who was convinced that Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution allowed him to do whatever he wanted, despite that being one of the narrowest parts of the Constitution as it relates to enumerated powers. I mean, this is the guy who's been constantly chanting about mass deportation and who just really, for all intents and purposes, views any restriction on his political power as inherently illegitimate, unconstitutional, or just plain wrong. Because why not? Because it's him. His ego is more important than any sense of civic responsibility when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump. So it's certainly a possibility that's what they wanted to do. I think that's a little more complicated than what Donald Trump is willing to do. I think he just didn't care and thought, you know what? I've had so many scandals. Matt Gaetz has had so many scandals.
Loyal. Right.
Yeah, and been loyal. So why not? And I mean, like, this is the thing I kind of mentioned in my I just released a video myself about an hour and a half ago, where I basically said, look, Matt Gaetz is not the only one with sexual assault allegations against him. Yeah. Pete Hegseth, the choice for the Secretary of Defense, has some pretty strong, credible accusations against him, seemingly drugging a woman if the police report is to be believed. And then you also have RFK Jr., whose former babysitter straight up accused him of sexual assault, and instead of outright denying it, he said he's not a church boy and had a very rambunctious youth, ignoring the fact that he was a fully grown married man when the alleged assault took place. So part of me just looks at this and I'm like, they didn't think they'd get this blowback. They were lazy. They were confident. They take any victory as a sign that they can do whatever they want. And now they're paying the price for it. Whether or not the other two will pay the price remains very difficult to see. But I do think this is kind of the inevitable result of us failing to stop Donald Trump getting back into the White House. I mean, we failed to stop a convicted felon taking the White House again and getting a trifecta. So
and he's just going to surround himself with like people who have committed just the same kinds of crimes that he has. Like, they're all insulated. Like, I gotta just sit here and wonder. It's crazy. Why the hell is the Republican Party filled with so many pedophiles and sex pests? Like, what the hell? They're all criminals.
Well, they're just, white trash in positions of power. Right. I mean, they're scum. They're scum. There's a lot of dirtbags in this country,
no accountability.
And we don't like to admit that our public political figures are dirtbags. But yeah, it's interesting. I just don't think the Republican Party cares and hasn't cared for a long time about scandal. Their voters don't care. All they care about is beating the opponent.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested, Connor. So you've had plenty of time to reflect, as we all have. I've been writing some video essays that I've been dragging my feet on because I want to get them perfect, because they're going to live. I'm going to have to live with them for the rest of my life in terms of judging why Kamala lost, and what we can learn from it. How do we do better next time? Because based on the reaction videos that Stat Pat and I have done, it seems like mainstream Democratic figures keep having this attitude of, well, we'll kind of reflect on everything and figure everything out and sift through the data, and we'll figure it out. I think it's pretty obvious what went wrong from a strategic planning perspective in terms of targeting, messaging, and political marketing. But and I did a video about that. But or I'm going to do a video about the 3 contextual reasons and 3 reasonable reasons she didn't win. But what were your thoughts? I mean, 7 million votes, right? That's a pretty big dip. Biden got 7 million more votes than she did this time.
Yeah, so I there's a couple things. So a bit of context for what I've been doing. I was uploading pretty frequently, and then I stopped for a bit, did occasional interviews here and there. But I was working on the Progressive Turnout Project, working as one of the fellows, working for Sean Casten to make sure he wasn't going to get hit by Nikki Conforti. And we were lucky enough to, the incumbency advantage in that case prevailed by 6.8 points. For those who know Illinois politics, that seat used to belong to Peter Roskam, a Republican, about 4 races ago. So while it is kind of bluish purple, I wasn't about to take anything for granted, and I wanted to make sure I could put as much of my experience as possible to basically ensure that seat held up. And we were thankfully able to secure that, no problem. But as to the issue with Kamala Harris, I think a lot of people, there's so much here, because on the one hand, we have to consider the environment in which Kamala Harris was running, and not just on the national level, but on the global level, across the board.
Yeah.
Incumbents lost. Incumbent parties lost. Incumbent politicians lost. And there was just a massive movement towards the right on the global stage. Now, I would say that I want to be very clear, that does not mean the Republicans have a mandate here. I have it right here in the terms of the popular vote on the national level. Trump won the popular vote by 1.6%. This is according to Reuters. Harris had 48.3% of the popular vote. Trump 49.9% when the total count was completed.
Yeah.
In the simplest of terms, Trump did not win a majority of the vote. He won a plurality. Now, he still wins.
That's right.
He still wins, and he still got more votes than Kamala Harris, and that still is unacceptable for a Democratic candidate that really should have been able to cream this convict. Yeah. The problem I think we've had is not only do we have a complete reversal of the incumbency advantage, which turns political science on its head in many cases, but we also just had an attempt to appeal to Republican aesthetics, which did not help an already difficult situation. One of the things I did before Kamala Harris's defeat was I did an interview with Dr. Isabel Skinner of the University of Illinois Springfield, and we were discussing sexism in elections. And one of the things that was brought up in passing was whenever a woman politician tries to go outside the perceived stereotype of the woman politician, they sometimes get penalized, especially if they try to make themselves appear more masculine. And I think part of the problem in that case was we still have not broken through the sexist thinking that hurts us. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't run women for the presidency. We should.
Of course, yeah.
But we also have to realize when we have this shift to the right on issues of gender and sex, there has to be a way that we have to talk about the candidates that doesn't allow bigoted people like Donald Trump and his supporters in some cases to basically ramrod the candidate into being the laughing Kamala, the crazy lady. That's how he billed her. And I think in that case, we did not have a proper defense thematically to basically say, no, this guy just does not care about policy. He has no policy. He will not improve your life. He will not make the price of groceries go down. His tariffs will make it worse. So I think thematically there was that. The other thing is I think what was really frustrating it to me, and I was hoping that with Biden dropping out, Kamala Harris could distinguish herself from Biden, and she did fail to do that. And so I think she was dealt with an incumbency penalty. But I would also point out, like, she was caught in a very bad position. I think if Kamala Harris was running months earlier, if she was given more time to kind of be respectful towards the administration she was serving in, and also distinguishing herself as a candidate in her own right, I think she would have done a lot better. And just one other thing I want to say, there was a lot of people, particularly online, that were just heavy right-wingers. I mean, we've seen data set after data set showing that Republicans and conservative media, especially appealing to young men, has been devastating to progressive media and its ability to communicate. And unfortunately, what we've seen in, at least on the progressive Twitch politics, YouTube politics, even the newsletter kind of thing, is we don't really have a guy. We don't have a main person or set of people who are explicitly saying, go out and vote. Vote Democrat over and over and over again. Republicans, they're on top of that message every single election. And I've been complaining about this for nearly 7 years now, in private and in public, that when Democrats win an election, the next time they stay home. They think, oh, we solved that. It will never come back to bite us in the long term. Republicans play the long game. So,
of course.
So that's another issue. The other issue, and I mentioned this in one of my newsletters, I forget which one it was, I'll find it and link it in the video afterwards, is that we need new people. A progressive Democratic Party, not just like this Twitch-brained progressive like party kind of approach that only accepts a Marxist as a legitimate sort of progressive figure. I mean, like a legitimate
the purity tests.
Like the purity test, the the Hassan stamp of approval. Those guys are not electable. Do not take those guys seriously at all. They like the American Communist Party or whatever. Those guys are not worth your time. But I mean, like, hey, we're going to start restricting ethylene oxide so you don't have an increased risk of cancer and leukemia, breast cancer in women. Hey, we're going to take a look at these guys who are price gouging the hell out of your eggs, your milk, the food, the meat and potatoes of things. Hey, we're the guys who got the Affordable Care Act
passed. You keep talking issues. You just said leaders. Okay, so let me get back.
There's a lot. I ramble. It's been a while.
Like either way, we're basically in total agreement because we've been discussing like these exact same things since the election, and like basically in full agreement with you. We brought up like each of the issues that you've tacked on so far.
So the three contextual variables that I had was that she had little to no fan base. She didn't even make it to the 2020 primaries.
Exactly.
I don't know if and I would include in that variable that she only had 107 days or whatever it was. She definitely needed more time. I think overall she was the wrong pick for vice president in general. I think there were better options. Anyway, then that was the second contextual variable was like you said, she represented the incumbency, which was elected under extreme circumstances, and regardless of their performance on policy, which was better than people gave them credit for, their popularity numbers were always tenuous. Always.
Yep.
So she needed to separate herself from that baggage, and she didn't.
Yeah, I didn't understand that, like, Biden was, like people forget, Biden did not have a very high approval rating.
No. He was underwater the whole time.
Yeah, it just dropped off a cliff and just kept on declining after the inauguration.
And then the third contextual variable is that what you said. It's still it's still a sexist and racist country, but those were the contextual variables beyond our control. There's still controllable variables that you haven't mentioned, though.
Yeah. So, for example, I'll just make this point: the Liz Cheney thing. I don't necessarily think that's like 5% of the vote. But, if you're walking around with Liz Cheney and then promising a break from like the tradition, you've got a traditionalist right there.
Yes.
And one of the worst, if we're being completely honest, saying I'm not going to support like what happened on January 6th does not mean you are a good person. It just means you did the bare minimum. Like, that's the thing that keeps driving me nuts when Democrats try to appeal to
centrists and anti-Trump Republicans.
It's an attempt to appeal to civics, but it's not civic improvement. It's people who do the bare minimum, follow their constitutional duty on that front. But then when it comes to not supporting torture or war crimes or anything of that variety, suddenly, that was in the past. Now we got to face this issue. It's like, no. Part of the reason we're here is because the Cheneys, the Bushes, all these people in the Republican Party have been pushing the country further and further to the right as best they can. And so, like, while I understand why some people in Harris's orbit thought it was a good idea to try and say, hey, we're not super left-wing people, the reality is if somebody comes at you and says you're a left-winger, your proper response isn't to be, if you are really a left-winger, your response isn't to be like, well, no, but blah, 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 listing off all these defenses. Your response is, why do you think that's a bad thing?
Yes.
I
couldn't agree more. It was just a failure on all fronts. The whole strategy was just doomed from the beginning because Biden ended up getting more of the Republican vote than Kamala Harris did. I think he got 6%.
It was like 6, 5, and 4, something like that.
Yeah. It was.
So I mean, in a more general sense, playing to the center and anti-Trump Republicans, and we talked about it on the show many times. The reason I think that they did that was because the older voters are more reliable voters, and they worked backwards from that statistical norm. When Trump went the other way, like you were talking about, the Gen Z vote, and now I'm coaching lacrosse with a bunch of Gen Z guys, and it's really scary that they think Trump is based. Like, they think Trump's on point.
God.
And I'm worried. It turns out, in terms of generational demographics, millennials are the only ones that are consistently on the left and trending in that direction. So that's nice to know. But so playing to the center and anti-Trump Republicans, I called that targeting. And then here was the other thing, okay? The vibes. So messaging and marketing have to do with vibes. She chose vibes over policy, which would have been okay if the vibes were just a starting point, and instead they became what the whole campaign was about, bringing back the joy and whatnot. It was kind of contradictory, right? She said, I'm going to bring back the joy, but when we fight, we win. So what are we doing here? Are we fighting? We're fighting with joy? Like, what are we, you know what I mean? There's this trying to appease everyone rather than being specific and, by extension, decisive. So the vibes should have been a vehicle by which they focus the conversation and attention onto policy, and they tried that towards the end, but felt like it was too late. And then vibes. I qualify this with, this is my personal preference. This is just who I am. This is what I want. The vibe she chose was wrong. She should have gone with anger. Anger is a completely natural response to injustice, unfairness, and inequality. It is a completely natural response to get angry, and the left does not know how to transform its anger into political productivity and performance on election day. So that's where I'm at, is the DNC needs a huge culture shift, and I think it starts with generational change at the top.
Yeah, if they want to court like the Republican vote so goddamn bad, why don't they learn from Republicans? Those people know how to weaponize their anger and utilize it in their messaging for the policies that they want to push forward, even if it's for just horrendous things, if it's for things that are objectively bad for the country. The Democrats have there's so much to learn there. And they just, they're not going to listen to anybody but their own little orbit, their own party insiders and whatnot, and they're the people that have managed to lose two of the easiest elections in history. Like, how can you lose to this guy? It boggles my, like, if they're so like high and mighty and like, oh, we have the data, we have the education, we have all these things that make us like holier than thou, so to speak. Yet it doesn't translate into actual into a cohesive message, something that resonates with the working class, the working people of this country that are struggling.
I would also say, like, I don't, like, when we initially had Tim Walz in the mix, like, as the main guy with the energy, a lot of it was, these guys are weird. But I would have been like, hey, these guys are sex pests. Like, seriously, I don't want to get to that point in our politics, but at the same time, it's like that instinct to be like better and rise above it, I think is part of the problem now, because
Yes, I couldn't
these
agree
guys
more.
are sex pests. We're not dealing with Romney. We're not in the
Right.
2012 election. This is an
No
election
kidding.
where the guy was literally like the Republican candidate ran 3 times, one of which he lost, and straight up tried to overthrow the government because he thought he won, or was so stupid and stubborn that he didn't care that he lost. So and yet he was credibly accused and found civilly liable of rape. He publicly bragged on Howard Stern about peeping on young girls for
Yeah.
the Miss America pageant. I mean, sex pest, predators, labels like that should have been everywhere. Negative ads all the time. Like the
Yes.
phrase "we're not going back," I liked that one. I thought that phrase of "hey,
Yeah,
these
me
guys
too.
are genuinely dangerous," that should have been
Yes.
the energy. It's like, they're dangerous. I'm going to make sure you get an expanded access to healthcare. I'm going to do something about the gun
Hey,
violence.
wouldn't that be nice?
I'm
There
go-
you go. So where
Yeah.
was that?
Yeah,
Where was
exactly.
that, dude?
And,
And
like
Not
for the
complicated.
longest
You just have to.
time,
We talk about like have the lists ready to go. When they
Uh-huh.
ask you how are you, what ideas do you have? Well, here's 5. Here's like, you know what I mean? Like there's no. You have to. It's this. If you're on the right, all
Be
you have to do is
prepared.
kind of play defense. But if you're on the left, you actually have to offer something.
Yeah.
And once again, we have learned that lesson. It's
Yeah,
not good enough to just say the vibes eventually ended up meaning that we're not Trump.
Yeah.
Do you want Trump in your living room for another 4 years, or do you want joyous Kamala, who is a cop, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, to put a sports analogy onto this, Democrats have been playing defense for fucking 8 years now. Even though for 4 years they've had the ball, why are they still playing fucking defense? They should like. Whereas the Republicans have just been just relentless in their slander, their smears, their disinformation, their just atrocious attacks on anybody even remotely considered left, and like the Democrats just bend over for it.
Yeah.
They talk about bipartisanship. It's just like these people are fucking attacking you. They are beating you to a pulp, and your response is to just not fight back, not have any counter narratives and whatnot. It's like, how often do you hear like all these Republican pundits and whatnot, all these conservatives just trash anyone even remotely considered left as like a degenerate or kid diddlers or whatever types of fucking just garbage that they spew every day, when it's all just projection. All the people that are culpable for sex crimes and whatnot, fucking sex trafficking, pedophilia, they're all on the fucking right. They're all in the Republican Party. Like this is
Yeah, but we
like,
got to stay focused. I want to stay
Well,
focused on what the DNC needs to do differently. I wanted to hear what Connor had to say about the generational
No.
change, because that's like that to me. Like we've got to review. Like, you know, I'd say a loser being defined as someone who is capable of winning but doesn't, because they fail to learn from their losses. They fail to evolve. They fail to grow.
they're just too scared to go low.
So, you know, well, you hear Gavin Newsom talk about what you just said, StatPow, going on offense. My point
Bingo.
is, do you really think Gavin Newsom's going on offense? And what does going on offense mean? It doesn't
Yeah.
mean just punch. It doesn't mean just punching them in the face. It means offering up something else. Say, do you
Yes.
really want these fools running things? So, what
Having
do you
something
think?
to
I mean, has
stand
to,
on.
what do you think has to change, Connor? Like, have you thought about because you're kind of in the system a little bit in Illinois.
Yeah, a little bit. It's hard to say. Like, I will just say this: Illinois Democrats, we don't really have much of a problem with winning.
Yeah.
We've been doing that pretty consistently. The problem, and I think this really goes back to what I said earlier about the media environment, especially among young men. We have had, I think, from the like, I don't want to say it was astroturfed, but it was kind of artificial. You know, you had influencers young influencers on behalf of the Democratic Party, but they were very clearly paid. There wasn't a feeling of authenticity, and I don't want to like slap these guys like Harry Sisson or whatever, because he was doing good work. But once it came out that these guys were being paid, it became a lot harder.
Oh,
Oh no.
no.
Connor, are you there?
Connor!
Uh-oh.
He'll be back.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine.
So he was talking about who are some of the content creators that he's talking about?
When it comes to what in particular?
Like the Democrat, the DNC paid the influencers.
Oh, I mean, I can probably point to Pod Save America.
Yeah.
Like they actually had Obama on at one point, I think, or at least they're in contact with him. Yeah, it's really transparent. You can tell who is being paid to be cheerleaders and who isn't.
Mhm.
Just by the rhetoric. Like, do they sound like they belong on MSNBC, or maybe like they're just gunning for that kind of notoriety?
Right. So I'm looking at these guys. So they would get influencers from different areas. Like this one guy, Merrick Hanna, some TikTok stars, 19 years old, 32 million followers on TikTok, and 20 million on YouTube and Instagram.
Hmm.
So he's known for his dancing videos. And he's like, this is the type of influencer that they're going after rather than people like Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn.
Yeah, it's this entitled attitude. Honestly, it reminds me of the figures that came out about how much they spent for those celebrity endorsements and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. The Beyonce, the Eminem, whoever the hell else, those big names. I think uh, I forget who else, but it's just disgusting. It's just like, why not invest in like a better ground game or something like that, or ads, you know?
How you doing, Connor?
About that, the
Oh,
Wi-Fi
God.
just I think
No.
didn't
You're all messed up. Hold on.
Oh no.
Yeah, you're gonna have to you're gonna have to disconnect and reconnect, homie.
Yeah.
I'll send him in the private chat.
Yeah, Megan chimes in saying there are articles saying that like 5,000 influencers were paid, like 5,000 different people. They say $20,000 each, and that doesn't include celebs.
Travel.
Yeah, yeah, insane. It's just like, why not like
You didn't get
inspire
paid. Why didn't
them
we get paid?
for crying out loud? Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, you guys are talking about. It's funny. You guys are talking about these sex scandals, and I'm like, yeah, what's new? I mean, I just what do you expect? This is who they are. This is who they have been.
yeah,
You know, I mean,
exactly.
This is the kind of sleaze bag political figures that the MAGA is embracing, and for all the political nerds out there, I say, I've said it a bunch of times. This is not Nixon. This is not Reagan. This is Barry Goldwater and George Wallace.
Yeah, yeah. It's
So
like
Connor, tell us. You broke up there for a minute, so tell us about pick it up where you left off.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing I find particularly frustrating is when we're talking about like the media environment, the authenticity issue. I think one of the things that needs to be reiterated here is not just the sexism, although I would argue that like authenticity and how people gauge it is heavily influenced by their sexism, and there's a great amount of literature to back that up. But the other thing I think is there wasn't a serious, organized structure of young advocates that was, specifically outside the typical like DNC mainstream media structure, telling young men, hey, if you want to take control of your life, advocate for policies that will protect you. Here's why Democrats are doing this, this, and this. Because a lot of what we've talked about, a lot of the policies we've talked about, if you sat down with the average person and said, hey, we as Americans want to make sure our kids are safe in our schools, we don't want them getting shot up. Most people would agree with you. They might disagree about how you go about that or what specific gun policies you're going to enact, but you could at least understand it. Pretty much all the policy discussions and even and mostly the aesthetic stuff as well was heavily influenced by this right-wing bro podcast type of narrative, and there wasn't really a counter to that. And I think one of the things that I said when I was talking with Dr. Isabel Skinner was men deserve a better media environment than these fake bro type podcasts that don't actually talk about like helping people. It's the aesthetics of the guy with the beer, smoking a cigar. I'm gonna tell you how to get rich kind of guys. Like, and like if you sat down with one of these people and said, "Do you really need to be giving your money to somebody like Andrew Tate who lies to you constantly,
right.
who panders himself not as a man of the everyday people, but a man with wealth? How is somebody like Donald Trump who has literal golden toilets gonna make you, the everyday man, feel better or live better?" These narratives were never really challenged, both on a vibes level and on a narrative level. And so I think the DNC, for one, they need more youthful people when they're running. They can't just be running based off of name recognition. Part of the problem is people hate the same people coming in over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, you also need to be able to have people in the alternative media environment who are saying, here's why you should vote Democrat. Here's the things we've been trying to do. And here's the big pain in the butts who are in the way. Here's all the things Trump's tried to do to get in our way. Here's all the things that the two dinos we had in the Senate, Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, did to get in our way. Here's why we want to get rid of the filibuster, because we can't deal with these Republicans who won't even work with us. And here's all the things that would mean for you, the everyday citizen. Point by point by point, aesthetic by aesthetic, narrative by narrative, and it needs to appeal not just to the your MSNBC, CNN watching people, as fine as that is. It also needs to be appealing to people who are trying to, like, who just got out of college or who are in college, who are trying to establish their life, and that means short and to the point.
Yeah, it requires these personalities and these influencers and whatnot actually convincing their very impressionable audiences to actually get involved in some way or another and actually have them stand for something, instead of just showing off like whatever flashy kind of lifestyle they got, so that way their impressionable base, their audience and whatnot, can just simply live vicariously through them. And just like, oh, I want to aspire to be that, not knowing the tools necessary to actually do so, not having any actual sense of community, because like a lot of it does stem from the male loneliness epidemic, and that's very prominent in young boys, honestly. And so like that's why these bro podcasts and whatnot are so popular and whatnot, but they don't exactly fucking offer anything. There's just some fucking rich guys just like in a circle jerk talking about who knows what the fuck. Like it's just most of it's just brain rot. It's not actually offering anything. If that can be utilized in a way to convince these young people, like, hey, like this is how the world is right now. Like wealth inequality, it's just getting worse and worse and worse, and it's all because of the wealthy. It's because of the top 1%. They're running away with all the money. Like the Rand Institute, I believe, ran a study saying that like $50 trillion in the past 50 years have been extracted from, I think, the bottom 90% of wealth earners in America. It's a gigantic problem that needs to be tackled, and like you're not going to get a solution from the fucking Republicans, that's for goddamn sure. Like the least you can do is get involved locally, especially at a state level as well, and it's harm reduction. Like for lack of a better term, it's like convincing people that that's the way to go. It can go a long way if done right, honestly.
So 2 questions for you, Connor. Well, I'll just give you one. Do you know who we're getting in 4 years? By the way, according to the current culture of the Democratic Party, that issue said about saying the same people. You know who we're getting in 4 years?
Was that the poll that showed that some people were preferring?
No, I didn't see any poll.
Again?
No, I didn't see any poll. I'm just saying. I don't know. This is based purely off of the name recognition that you just made. You know who I'm talking about.
You're probably talking about Newsom. I have a feel. Newsom.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're going to be scared to death to run a woman.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even about that. It's just about the fact that, like,
well, that eliminates all the women, dude. No, Kamala's lost this time. Eliminated the women for another round.
No, I mean,
I'm not saying I think that's the way it should be, but I've heard that commentary. I've seen that commentary, and I don't think it's wrong.
Yeah,
especially with a guy like Newsom waiting in the wings. All kinds of connected Gen X. They move on from baby boomers, but really to another neoliberal Gen Xer. Tapped into Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
it's so frustrating with that. Like, I get why some Democrats would want to do that, because he's relatively young. He's appealing. He gives this aesthetic of like almost like a Kennedy look, but while also not having
California
to deal with
Kennedy.
like California Kennedy kind of thing. But the thing is, he's not new. Like if like I worry that like
He's been around for
like
a while.
he's been around for a while. He'll have a record to attack. I've been hearing quite a bit about his influence on housing. And the
he's
thing
not
is,
popular in California. He's not popular in California.
No,
yeah,
yeah.
like partisan identification will protect him in California if he were to run. But the other thing, the thing that has to be emphasized now is we're not running up against Republicans who care about the free market. We're running up against reactionaries now. It's not
Yes.
conservatism, it's reactionary politics, and
Yeah.
everything else, including economics, is subservient to that reactionary ideology. So
The
if they want to
Ritz and
hate Gavin Newsom on housing and make a massive conspiracy about some people buying up all the houses and whatever group of people they think that is, they will do that. So right off the bat, that's number one vulnerability, and he hasn't even announced his candidacy yet and we haven't even inaugurated the president-elect from this election. So that alone, that is the sign that we have a problem there.
Of course.
And there's going to be
You can't deny
Democratic
that he's the
strategists.
leading name. You can't deny that he's the
Oh
leading
no,
name.
no.
Yeah.
But the thing that drives me nuts is there are going to be some establishment Democratic figures who are well established in terms of their history with previous presidents in the media environment. James Carville comes to mind. I wouldn't be surprised if he was pushing Gavin Newsom. There's plenty to be said there. And I would not be surprised if they wanted to put him forward before they even figured out the narrative they're going to have in the midterms.
Of course.
And so, like, I want, like, right now we have a perfect media storm to attack the upcoming Trump administration. If your goal is to really defeat, stop, and obliterate the Trump administration's ability to enact its policy for the next 2 years leading up to the midterms, your goal is to point out he nominated 3 alleged sex pests. One's practically confirmed at this point with the CNN report that there was another minor that he allegedly had sexual relations with. To put it lightly, I won't use the word because I don't want you guys getting like banned or whatever. But and then you've got Pete Hegseth. I don't know why I have trouble pronouncing his name, where he just was straight up asked in the Capitol building, "Did you sexually assault a woman in California?" And he gave a damning non-answer, as Tim Walz would say.
Yeah.
And so that's number one. He nominated 3 sex pests. Number 2, he's going to cause all these problems for women's reproductive rights, and he's threatening to deport millions of Americans, just regardless of whether or not they're here with like documents or not.
So that's the big thing. Is so you keep talking about the people, and I know you know a lot about that, but I think what really matters is the visuals. Yeah. When we see mass deportations and we see that shit break out, and we're seeing the kids crying and the moms crying and the dads putting up a fight, and the fucking military coming into the homes of Americans and doing that kind of shit. Like, I don't even know what it's going to look like. I don't know how much exposure we're going to get. We'll see what they do with the cameras and so forth. But that's really going to be, I hate to say it, the political capital that will be leveraged going into the probably as early as the midterms, because that seems to be obvious to me that that's their number one priority.
Yeah,
is the mass deportations.
It was saying day one. Yeah,
it's such a disgusting thing that it has even gotten to the point where we're having that conversation. But I mean on gun control even. And also, please let me know if my mic peaks a little bit.
You're good.
It's a dynamic
One
mic.
quick statistic for you, Connor. Did you know that 47% of Americans are okay with internment camps to facilitate mass deportations?
We've ignored the isolationism and the xenophobia for too long, and we've let it spread. It's completely and utterly unacceptable. Like, this is the thing that drives me nuts, because like I am fascinated by my ancestral history. I'm fascinated by where my family came from. Like, I know on my German side what century they came in, the Schweikerts, what city they came from. It's called Karlsruhe. It's about an hour south of Stuttgart. And yet, when they came over in the 19th century, we did not have the same standards that we have now. So if they were the standards that we have at the very moment were enacted, my ancestors would not be here. I would not be here. And yet the same people who would be fascinated by that history would also see no problem with enacting even more cruel immigration approaches, because they don't seem to realize how bad our legal immigration system is for people who just want to come here to work.
Of course.
And so emphasizing we want to be on the offensive, but we also have to remind these people that Trump's lying to you. They've always been lying to you about how this process works, what is legal and what is not, what is acceptable and what is not by international law and American law. And furthermore, emphasize that Donald Trump is the kind of person who will spit on an undocumented immigrant and then hire them the next day, because he's already done that multiple times. So that's a whole thing. But I also want to emphasize, part of the reason the March for Our Lives movement took off so much is because there were young people who were saying things like, if I get shot, don't tell people not to politicize my death. Put my body up against the White House, like that kind of thing. Yeah, don't hide from it. And I was born in Highland Park. The July 4th shooting, that was where I was born. And so that emphasis of like, hey, if something happens to me, don't forget my name. Don't forget what happened. Throw it in their face. That kind of politics need to start again and again and make them rue the day they left innocent people behind.
Did you ever hear Kamala say something to the effect of, immigrants are good and decent, hardworking people?
No, like it was defensive stuff, but it was like,
in fact, she said that she would just do the border bill the way it was. The way it was.
Yep.
And you, baby boomer liberals, because you're the ones in charge, expect us younger progressives to get on board with that? When we see Liz Cheney up there with Kamala Harris instead of Bernie Sanders, you don't think that's going to piss us off? Where's your respect for us? We should get into this. So I talked to some baby boomer liberals not too long ago, and
he called me about this.
They are still in denial about why Kamala lost from a strategic perspective.
Yeah.
And they think it's this, and credit to James Carville, because we covered his evolution on this. We started off with him, and he said identity politics and defund the police and all that bullshit. And then he came around and he finally said maybe Bernie was right. Now, he only said maybe, so whatever. But
that maybe's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
But the Bernie it's clear to me when you lost 7 million votes. I mean, yes, there's that cultural affect of like, okay, we did it. They don't show up for the next election. Yes, that is a trend. But 7 million, a 9% dip in participation, is enormous. And I think you could credit at least 4 to 5 million of those votes as progressives who hate the DNC.
Yeah.
Yes.
And feel disrespected by the DNC and feel like that Bernie was treated like trash, and that they said, I'll suck it up to get Trump out in 2020, but you better give me something in these next 4 years, and it better be big.
Yeah.
I'm not showing up next time. I won't vote for Trump, but I'm not showing up this time. That was the missing voting bloc. It's the only political sect that explains the size.
Yeah.
It was a lot of people that didn't show up.
I could comfortably assert that, honestly. Like in 2020, in 2020, like Dieter mentioned before, it was extreme circumstances. You know, it was pandemic and whatnot. It's just like anybody but Trump at that point. But a lot of people don't forget, Biden actually maintained the coalition that Bernie built up during the primaries. You know, he did make some concessions and whatnot, and Bernie actually campaigned for him that whole season and whatnot. Like he worked his ass off for Biden because he understood the gravity of the situation. Trump cannot win again, and it's like I completely understand his frustration, like his scathing rebuke of the Democrats in that letter that he made public and whatnot. It's like, I didn't see fucking Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail at all. It's like, where were the progressives? Why aren't you reaching out to young progressive people? Like for crying out loud, just someone in the squad, or just bring Bernie Sanders along for a few rallies or whatever. It's just like, or what exactly are you offering that the progressives have been pushing for the better part of 6 years now? 8 years if you go back to Bernie's campaign in 2016. It
drives me nuts that these guys
it drives me insane.
These guys like Bill Maher was saying the whole time, play to the center, and it's like,
where they get
good call. That's exactly what Hillary did, and she actually did better, right, in terms of percentages. She had 2.7 million more votes than Trump did in 2016. and it
I
just
will say
wasn't
though,
distributed properly. No, it's all good.
I will say I used to like Bill Maher, but I'm looking over as I
He's a
grew
piece
older.
of shit.
He's a
He's a
pain
piece
in
of
the
shit.
ass. Excuse
Yeah,
my
he's got
like.
some
Normally I
shit.
don't cuss on
Oh,
these
sorry.
shows, but like,
We shouldn't swear because you might be using this. Okay.
no, you're good. I don't mind doing the censorship. It's just when I do it, I have a little bit of a branding thing there. But no, like I've looked at like the unmitigated gall of a guy who, first of all, I would not be surprised. Well, actually, I'll just say I think he's anti-vax as hell. I cannot
Oh, yeah,
stand
he's
that,
dumb.
that the anti-vax angle was not brought up every single time that Bill Maher or even or Trump himself and RFK was opened their mouth. Like it
Right.
is infuriating to me that one of the miracles of American medical science has been lambasted by some of the biggest grifters on the face of the earth, who have
Yeah.
not only disrespected the doctors and medical professionals who have been working their asses off to protect the lives of every American, regardless of party, but also disrespecting people by revamping the BS claim that vaccines cause autism.
Yeah.
And I cannot stand that we have ignored that insanity for years. That's the other thing. In the middle of a pandemic, when he was president, when hundreds of thousands of people had already died and we had a possibility to get a vaccine, Donald Trump reneged on his promotion of the vaccine and spread a conspiracy about the vaccine his own government created. That should have been everywhere.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
says
but
a lot.
they were scared of losing the anti-vax vote, dude. They think they can get everybody. This is what I think that a big problem is with them is they have taken the concept of equality and made it ubiquitous to the point of organizational incompetence or dysfunction.
Yeah.
And meaning that everybody's opinion counts the same. There's no real the structure is flat except for these handful of people who worked for Clinton, Obama, and Biden. They're the ones running the show. It's obvious to me that they're ones running the show. Like Pelosi is in charge and running the show. I mean, they asked her in a New York Times interview, "Do you wish you had gotten involved earlier and gotten Biden to not even run and have an open primary?" And she says no. I'm like, what?
That's
a
conversation for another time. It's like you kind of nailed it. Like organizational dysfunction. That is basically the modus operandi of the Republican Party as it stands right now. Like you see, Trump likes to go on about like, oh, I only hire the best people and whatnot. It's like, no, it's just people that kiss his ass.
Yeah.
You want to talk about organizational dysfunction? We haven't seen jack shit yet. The types of people that he's putting in his cabinet, that he's putting at the head of all these agencies and departments and whatnot. What experience do they have? What are they going to bring to the table? No, they're just going to fucking destroy them from the inside out, like Project 2025, lists out clearly. Like that is the goal. The people who the Heritage Foundation props up and whatnot. It's like the oil exec that is at the head of, like, I think it's like Liberty Energy or something like that is now going to be the head of the fucking Department of Energy. It's like, how fucking more brazen can you get? It's just it's deconstruction.
Okay,
from
so
the inside
are you
out.
ready to, Connor? Are you ready to go to war? Because Steve Bannon has been saying this is a war for 8 years, and he's the godfather of MAGA. So, if someone goes to war with you, don't you have to go to war with them? Because these baby boomer liberals say. I talked to one of them today, and he or she was saying that that you got to do everything you can before we escalate to revolution. And my point is, like, didn't we just do everything we could? The only thing we haven't done is a big left progressive movement. That's the only thing we haven't done, and you screwed them over twice. So, I mean, like, I think it's time for the politics of revolution. Maybe not the right time is like immediate, but over the course of the next 4 years, I think there needs to be a surge of really millennials, and hopefully Gen Z will get behind us, but to take control of the party, because these people don't know what they're doing.
No, either. Like, clearly we need just like more bipartisanship. We just need to move to the right to convince, I mean, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, I guess it's like been really broke. Let's just keep on using it, I guess, because like we fucking can't do anything different. Can't think outside the box. Have no idea that we're actually in a war. So like, yeah, let's just bend over. Let's just let's just admit like Connor. I've been like I haven't been more convinced than by this election that Democrats don't give a fuck about winning, especially on a federal level. They actually don't really like care if they lose or not because like what do their donors care? Like they're going to get a windfall once Trump takes charge, and so it's like. Well, I mean, like better luck next time. It's like because they don't fucking actually stand for anything. It's just like the most the a tale as old as time. It's like money controls everything, and if like the Democrats actually like because there's you can only go so far right. Like you see all these mainstream media pundits and whatnot, all these like Democratic analysts and strategists and whatnot say, well, Kamala went too far left. Kamala was too progressive. The progressives
Right.
are why she lost, which is like complete and total other bullshit. It's like fascism is a dead end. You can only go so far right. So it's like, do they need to adopt the GOP platform in order to be accepted? Or what? It's like they're not going to vote for you when they can just vote for the
Have the
Republican.
real thing.
Exactly.
The real thing.
It's so fucking just
No, basically
absurd.
Kamala's policy pitch, whether the baby boomer liberals want to accept it or not, it felt like Republican light. It felt like a kind of old school neoconservatism that was without the racism and without the sexism and
At least
without the
we're not
culture
them.
war stuff. Right.
Yeah,
And that's
it
where
was-
the vibes came in. Go ahead, Connor. You haven't talked
I
about
will say aesthetically, I think that's true. I think on the policy, like there were still things that were, talking about helping people get a house,
Yes.
trying to actually address the concerns of
Excellent.
everyday people. I think that was something that was definitely on the table. And to your point earlier, Stat Pat, she just didn't have enough time. Like that's the thing. Like I don't think Kamala Harris would have been a bad president. I think she would have been a very good one. She was well qualified. She was in the Senate. She was, she was a prosecutor. I mean, administratively, she had the chops. But the
Yes.
problem is she was never given a chance to succeed. And to Dieter's point, I think the Democratic Party, particularly the old guard, is in an abusive relationship with the Republican Party.
Yes.
Big time.
It is. I will say this.
They just keep hitting them, dude. Hey,
Yeah.
stop hitting me. Please stop hitting me so we can talk about policy in a productive way. Oh, you want to talk about military spending? We can talk about that. Everything
our
else,
children
fuck
alone,
you.
you
Everything else,
degenerate.
fuck you.
God damn it, dude.
and it's especially frustrating because even on issues where you should have been able to pressure the Republicans to defend our international interest in Ukraine, they managed to create an entirely new set of conspiracy theories surrounding homophobia around Zelensky. And that was and instead of being like, hey, weren't you the guys who were talking about, defending us from enemies, foreign and domestic? Hey, why is a bunch of conservative influencers and tenant media getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Russian government? Like, that's the other thing. The word of traitors never came up. Like in an election season, a bunch of conservative podcasters who had millions or hundreds of thousands of subscribers and followers were directly implicated in taking money from the government. The Russian government, whether or not they knew it, they were still taking it. And there was never once an overarching conversation of, hey, what's going on in the conservative alternative media sphere where an enemy of the United States that attacked us in Syria with the Wagner group, what did they find appealing about what they were saying? That did not come up. That story went out and then it died. And that should have been
that's another thing too. Because the Democrats, as it stands, don't take independent media seriously. So that's why, I mean, even though it's gigantic.
Well, they're going to take a hit, dude. MSDNC is done like dinner.
Oh yeah.
They are fucking
the
done.
Gigantic
They have to do a complete overhaul of that brand. Comcast is selling it. They're selling it.
Yeah. It's like it's such independent media is so fucking huge. The conservative apparatus, media apparatus in general, and it's just like you need to start fucking taking these people seriously. Their influence is beyond statement, and the influence that they have on a whole lot of minds in this country beyond fucking Fox News, Newsmax, and whatnot is gargantuan. And until you actually acknowledge and go on the fucking offense for crying out loud, this is going to keep happening call them out for like where they get their funding and whatnot. Call them out for the fact that they are beholden to like the oil tycoons that fucking own the think tanks that fucking fund all these operations, the Daily Wire, Blaze TV, the Daily Caller, fucking you name it. No, fucking Crowder, Tim Pool, fucking like these Russian fucking operatives, dude. Like, yeah. Like,
so it's almost like the three of us understand the politics of offense better than the current leaders of the DNC.
You don't say.
I would just also say like the other thing that I think like to the point of like the abusive relationship that the Democratic Party, particularly its old guard, because there are people who are young or who are willing to say in the know who are like, yeah, no, when are we going to start calling these people out for what they're doing? When are we going to start calling them out for being like overtly anti-Semitic and like spreading great replacement conspiracy theories? There are people in there who are willing to say that stuff. But, there's also, I think, another side of this, which is, we have not had this conversation of, hey, these guys don't have any beliefs.
Right.
They have targets. They have people they don't like. They don't like trans people. They don't like gay people. They don't like bi people. And their understanding of originalism as it relates to the Constitution is whatever is on the agenda for who we're going to screw over today. And so, like
yeah, no, like they are a party that is obsessed with punishing and belittling rather than lifting people up. Like that's like the biggest difference that you can point to, and it could go far. It could actually land. It's like, how do you, as the Democratic Party, in one breath say, these people are trying to take your away rights. These people are a threat to democracy. These people don't actually believe in protections for the vulnerable and whatnot. How you say that in one breath and also be like, we should work with them.
Yeah,
we should have them in our cabinet. Like for fuck's sake,
the politics
dude.
of civility. Yeah.
Oh my god,
it's
toxic.
Well, that might be the silver lining, Connor, is that the politics of bipartisanship are officially dead. I mean, this is over. Like, we cannot
One would hope
act
so.
like this, that the Republican Party is something we can work with in the future. We need the politics of political dominance. Like, this is, until MAGA is gone from the Republican Party, we're not working with it. I mean, it's there's nothing good about that, about their policies. We'll see what they end up getting accomplished. Hopefully, they're as stupid and lazy as we think they are. But
one can only hope that they're like so super incompetent to where like it was just like mass dysfunction, and it's just going to be a shit show beyond imagination. Honestly.
Oh, and by the way, Connor, what you were saying earlier about when you were going really good there, talking about ideas of what to say, if we're going with the rhetoric of political offense, then you think about her central slogan, which should have been "We're not going back." But it ended up being, when we fight, we win. So that begs the question, where was the fight?
Yeah.
Where was the fight? Because you had one good debate performance. You think that's enough for putting up a fight? I mean, obviously, I think she would have had a better chance personality-wise of just going full bitch. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, just relentless, I'm going to crush this guy when I get into office. And that, maybe she wouldn't have wanted to, but you can't deny, you say she's qualified. And yes, technically she was qualified, but she was a cop, and she was also very specific in her fan base. I mean, which is to say that she didn't have much of one. She wasn't even popular in California. Like, she has a reputation for just sticking her finger in the air and figuring out which way the political winds are blowing and going in that direction. She did that with weed. She did that with Medicare for all. She did that with immigration.
Yeah.
So she was, and we joked about it. I was like, holy shit, this pedestrian politician is going to be the next president of the United States. And that's fine, because it's not Trump. I mean, I saw an interview today, too, of a millennial voter in New York. Or maybe I don't know if we want – yeah, it was about this guy walking around New York doing interviews about Trump, like, winning in certain parts of town. And she was like, no, I just showed up because it was the lesser of two evils. Like, Kamala didn't inspire me. It's not like I didn't show up for the politics of joy.
I think that was, like, the case for a lot of voters, honestly.
Go ahead, Connor.
And I will say, like, I definitely think there's this kind of disconnect. So Kamala definitely did have this reputation, but I would also point out that we've kind of had this crossroads back and forth from progressive resurgence to more center Democratic politics. And I think Kamala has been caught in between both of those. Because when I met her when she was running in the Iowa caucus and she didn't do particularly well, there was talk of expanding healthcare. There was talk of, taking action on gun violence, whether it was preventing suicides or shootings. There were policy discussions that were progressive, if not, well, nominally progressive or outright progressive, that I think she really wanted to push on. The problem is, I think we haven't had an agree, like a balance between the old guard and the new. And
Right.
Unfortunately, instead of trying to seek this balance, we've had a conversation where it's shut up, new guard, let
Right.
James Carville decide how we're going to
Yeah.
run the party. And
Yep.
it's just like, I'm sorry, hey, there's a guy who, in my area, Andrew Honig, he's in his early 20s, and he won a county board election. There are young people who are willing to run. There are people who
Right.
are willing to primary and challenge Democrats.
Mhm.
So it's like, we have to build an infrastructure that isn't just the old guard. We have to have this conversation where it's not just Kamala Harris, but the larger conversation within the Democratic Party, which is, hey, what happens when the old guard is gone? Unless you've got the fountain of youth there, you're not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of lefties who want to get involved and take positions of leadership within the DNC.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
And I think it should be less of a gradual transition from old guard to new. And I think it should be like boiling water and be really quick.
Yeah.
It
I
needs
don't
to
think
speed
that
up.
Yeah,
I mean,
like-
Pelosi's got to go. I mean, the thing is, Hakeem Jeffries is a Gen Xer, right? So
Yeah,
we
I
got
think
him
so.
to deal with.
Yeah,
That's gonna be fun.
like the millennials alone are like the biggest working
bloc?
class block. Well, I don't know about
Right.
voting block. Maybe probably like when it comes to registered voters, I'm not exactly too sure about that. But when it comes to that, like the working people
Right.
of this country, it's not even remotely close. It's like what the hell is like the average age in Washington, like the upper 60s or something like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
insane. It's insane.
Yeah, so good luck with this, guys. I mean, this is going to be fun taking on the establishment like this. I don't
Yeah.
think that we just see, Connor. You have so much knowledge about like the specifics of what's wrong with the right, and I understand the origins of the right, why they are the way that they are, and I don't think there's enough awareness within the Democratic establishment to understand how important generational change is in this moment. I think they're so arrogant that they are not even willing to accept that they might be wrong, that this approach of playing to the middle and playing to anti-Trump Republicans, of going for vibes over policy, of going for incrementalism over structural change. That's the real dichotomy. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, that's the difference between progressivism and liberalism in a practical sense. And that's where progressives need to shut up and get in line, because we can disagree over the details of what these policies should be. At the end of the day, we need to agree that we will no longer settle for neoliberal incrementalism, as
Yeah.
is obvious in these election results. And if you're too stupid to look at the results in an honest and truthful way, then get out of the way.
Yeah.
Because you are the problem now. I mean, I used to let baby boomer liberals off the hook with saying, hey, they did the best they could up against some pretty tough economic and political forces, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, and now you
That
got
opinion has
and now you got
changed.
like legacy media like Morning Joe bending over and just basically kissing Trump's ring and whatnot.
Well,
It's-
that
it's-
was
it's
what
like-
I was going to say. Now, see, MSNBC has an opportunity here. If whoever buys them says, I'm going to make generational change in this institution, and have it be all like younger people, or like keep like Lawrence O'Donnell or something like that, and have them be like guests, I don't know, but put out to pasture these people who did not suffer through the trauma of 9/11 and recognize the transition that made for an effect it had on globalism. And I remember, I think the dividing line that's there too with the generational gap between Gen Xers and millennials is that the Gen Xers got out of college in time for the tech boom.
Yeah.
They benefited from that. So they saved for retirement. So I don't see them needing a whole lot of benefits. We can, take from them what they took from us. So I don't, Connor, what else you got on your mind? I've been running for a while.
I just wanted to note one last thing, and
Sure.
I've been, it's been a long time since I've heard anybody seriously talk about getting money out of politics since Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
And granted,
I
like running
completely
like
agree.
Bernie again wouldn't work. You need young people. I mean, like AOC's got the chops rhetorically to be like, hey, remember the stupid Supreme Court decision by the right wing court, the Roberts Court, that got us here in the first place? That's been screwing everybody over for the last 20 or so years.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, why don't we talk about that and talk about amending the Constitution? Seriously, like the Republicans are constantly talking about how Democrats are spitting on the Constitution while doing more than that to the Constitution. Let's amend the Constitution to get rid of Citizens United. If we seriously want to talk about corruption, the first litmus test that every Republican should have to look at whenever they say, I'm going to fight the elites is, what are you going to do about Citizens United? That should be every single, like, that's going to be the big one. Hey, who are your donors? I want you to disclose all of them.
Yeah.
Voluntarily.
Yeah.
Oh,
and if you don't, then you can't be trusted. Like
OpenSecrets.org.
Yep,
the only way.
OpenSecrets.org.
Okay, so how would you make that happen?
Well, I would say, like, first of all, like, when I'm talking about, like, rhetorically, you need to be able to get it in the news.
Institutionally or whatever. How do you, I mean, see, that's a tall order you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. And I think anybody who has this conversation has to be honest, this is a long-term investment for a party. Yeah. So, for example, let's say AOC took this up. I'm just using her as an example because she's a young progressive that we, like, one of the few we've got. Yeah,
really. There's only a handful of
them. Yeah, we lost a couple there. And I would say, first off, get it in the news. Start talking about it as much as possible and saying, all right, I need control of the House. I need control of the Senate. And that needs to be the other thing. Democrats didn't tell people what they needed to achieve their goals. They just said they were going to do it. And especially
win by a touchdown. They never said it. Win by a touchdown. It was so easy.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me, man. It's so frustrating. Yeah. I completely agree.
And so, like, saying, hey, I can't just be elected president or whatever to get this done. I need legislators who are willing to work with me. So I'm saying, hey, I want to amend the Constitution. Here's how we're going to go about that. And that means here's what I need from you, the voter. A lot of times the conversation is they get elected and they don't do anything. And then that you have to tell them, well, yeah, they didn't have enough of a control of the Senate. You didn't give them.
Right.
Yeah, even Trump has been spouting that out. It's because it's all about him, right?
It's a cult.
He hasn't been about like, well, in order to get my agenda done, I'm gonna need the Senate and the House as well. Like he thinks that he can just get everything done unilaterally and whatnot. And
so that was one of the baby boomer liberal excuses today, though, was that we haven't seen. You know, I've made the point to her. I said the perception problem, whether you like it or not, is that Democrats don't deliver. And you might have all those lofty promises and whatever. The American public does not believe in the Democratic Party to deliver big, meaningful, historically large change. Call us entitled, but that's what we want. That's what people will show up for. And the point that I made was, well, we had an opportunity in 2008 when we did have both houses and we had the presidency and we could have swung for the fences and hit a home run. Even we could have gotten a double or a triple with a public option. But instead, Obama did the Heritage Foundation's Romney Care. And basically a light version of that. Now, the ACA is fine. It's maybe a modest step in the right direction, but it should ultimately be a goal to provide health care for the goddamn citizens. It's also like bad business. Like, we're not framing that issue right. Like, it's not just a humanitarian point, and the tenet of democracy is that everyone has the right to be healthy, as well as the health, as well as freedom of speech and all those other rights.
Yeah.
But people who are sick aren't contributing to the economy. People who are banged up and recovering, they're not contributing to the economy.
Frame it.
So if it was, and I ran into when I went live solo last week, I got 3 viewers that in chat voted for Bernie at some point and then voted for Trump in this most recent election. So anti-establishment is in. That's the word that I think we're all kind of pussyfooting around, is anti-establishment. That's that's the brand that Bernie represented, and that's the brand that Trump. It's the only thing that they really had in common.
Yeah, and like the unfortunate thing about that is like it is a non-starter for the Democratic Party. It's a non-starter for the DNC. Like they're never going to accept that. They're never going to allow an actual progressive with those kind of that kind of messaging and those kind of ideals to get close to the White House. and that's one of the most frustrating parts about it. It's like you do need a Bernie Sanders style coalition to go above and beyond. Like, like
So
they
John Stewart.
please, I would love that. Like let's go above and beyond in the primaries to where like their victory is fucking undeniable. You
Yeah.
know,
So Connor, what do you
yeah.
think of the John Stewart idea? Kulinski's talking about it, and other people are too. Vosh.
Yeah. Oh, I don't even want to mention the V guy's name right now.
Yeah.
Okay,
What happened
that's
with him?
right. Oh,
We're not. I don't want to mention the horse thing all that much.
it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. I can tell you. I can tell you about.
Yeah,
it
tell me
some other time,
offline.
Peter.
Tell me
It's-
offline
yeah,
later,
yeah,
Step
yeah,
Pat.
yeah,
Step
yeah.
Pat will fill me
Yeah.
in.
Oh,
Sure.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph. Yeah. Okay, where was I? So John Stewart. Yeah, I think like there is some value into having somebody with that celebrity populist appeal, but I also think you run into a very similar problem to like the new people perspective. People will say, "Oh, like we've been talking for about an hour and 10 minutes about new people, new guard." And yet one of the first people we mention here is Jon Stewart, who, mind
Yeah.
you, like is an excellent critic of the Democratic Party and would be, in my opinion, a great president. But he's also open to that criticism that, hey, this guy has some gray hairs for a reason. He's been around for a while. So
Yeah.
and so like I do think getting name recognition is very important. It's critical, but you also have to start from day one,
Yeah.
getting young people on the state level, on
Yeah.
the national level, up and down the ballot. Hey, where's our young people? Where's our new people? It's like, all right, we're gonna start like putting out feelers out there for people running for public office. Here's where we're going to be looking for people with any sort of government experience. Like that's one of the reasons we were literally having in the Daily Herald, the local paper out here, where we had a young candidate, Andrew Honig, who primaried his state rep. He lost, but then he went again in the county board and won. So I think like, yes, Jon Stewart is a good option as one potential source, but we also have to remember just pushing for celebrities isn't enough. We need new people.
Yeah, but you need so this is kind of a good maybe place to round it out, or just move on to conceptually because it's a strategic question. But we need big change yesterday.
Yes,
and we're not going to be talking about a lot for 3 years. Like we're going to do the midterms, but we're honestly going to be sucking it up for 3 years from now. And so it's kind of like survival until then.
It's like right now, like this is the time. Like if there are new voices, new people to champion, like
they're gonna. That's my point. Is that it's gonna. My point is that over those next 3 years, maybe we should make an agreement to keep our eyes out for new talent, because we're all realizing here that the new talent the establishment DNC is going to pick is not going to be enough. It's not going to be strong enough.
Of course.
You need people. I was telling. I mean, I want. I say no more Mr. Nice Guy, right? No more kind and loving boss lady. Give me, talking about leaders, Connor. I don't know if you've seen you saw my DNC, a Party of Losers, video, but I believe that you can talking about equality, right? Being ubiquitous within the culture of the DNC. There needs to be a separation between voters and candidates in terms of personality. I'm talking about, okay? Voters, because we can't ask people to change who they are, on the left do not like conflict, and that's okay. They don't necessarily like competition either. Competition, I guess, is not always a form of conflict, but you get my point.
Yes.
So we don't ask them to change. We ask them to change the way they look at political candidates, and we want them to embrace personalities who love conflict, who are predisposed. This is the whole practicality, the practical application of Gavin Newsom saying, let's go on offense. It's like, okay, then let's get offensive people. Then let's get people who have a chip on their shoulder with something to prove, who, like, I grew up with a lot of hockey players from South Boston, and the toughest thing you can do to a bully is get in their face and dare them to hit you, so that because you win either way. Either they back down and you either back down and they don't hit you and you look strong, or they do hit you and you take it like a man and you stay there in their face and you look tough.
Yeah.
And then other people will
That
get
kind of
involved. This is
attitude.
my bully. This is my anti-bully theory, where you don't beat the bully. Yeah, you beat the bully by punching him in the face, but even if you're weaker, you keep getting up and fighting back, because eventually people will see the injustice and do something about it. And
Right.
we talk
You get
about,
people on your side.
do you think that there is reluctance? This is, I don't know if, let me know if you don't want to talk about this, but do you think there is reluctance among Democratic leadership or even progressive leadership to call out MAGA as like bad people? Like, for example, Biden got in trouble for calling them garbage, and Hillary got in trouble for calling them deplorables. And that was supposedly a bad thing. My whole point is actually they didn't play into that enough. They didn't go hard into that enough, because that's what offense looks like to me. Do you think people are reluctant to do that because they're worried about a MAGA gun nut climbing a clock tower?
I mean, it's so hard to say. I mean, like, it's hard to get into the. This is the thing that, like, when we talk about intentionality and the intentions of people that we don't interact with personally, I think that's a bit that you can get into a difficult situation where you have to deal with the burden of proof on our end. Like, how do we know their intentions and why they're reacting the way they are? I'm sure that there's some element of fear of violence, but I mean, like, I would also say, like, in terms of like the people who own a lot of the media environment, like Jeff Bezos, he was kissing Trump's ring too. Why?
Yeah,
Because
not doing
his
endorsement.
yeah, his capital was threatened.
Yes.
So I think there's a very serious issue there. But the other thing I think that needs to be brought up is, I think Democrats took the wrong lesson from 2016. They were upset by Trump's rhetoric, and I am too. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's the dumbest timeline you could possibly get. But I think the other thing that needs to be reiterated is it's dangerous. So if you want to talk about a fight, say, hey, we are under threat by a guy who calls us the enemy of the people. Of course we're going to fight. Like, when somebody comes up to you and says, you're a traitor, your response isn't to say, well, no. I'm like, your response should be, what the hell did you just say to me? Like,
Right.
that thing, especially when they're taking money from the Russian government. The media people that were interviewing them, talking about, like, setting the narrative on the alternative media stage, were literally taking hundreds of thousands of dollars per video.
Yeah.
And I would love to see, like, like, I know, like, I have my issues with David Pakman, but I will say he's not afraid to sit down with these guys and say, hey, why were you taking this money? Like, and then they say,
Dave
well,
Rubin.
if you look at the he did that to Dave Rubin, and Dave Rubin, what was his response? Nothing. He just cussed Dave out and, like,
he just insulted him. Yeah, like fucking.
Well, there it is. So either were you a useful idiot for Russia, or were you a traitor? Which was it? That should be the response in a lot of these cases.
Him, Tim Pool, fucking Benny Johnson, and Lauren Chen.
There's a bunch of them.
There was a bunch of them. No,
Lauren Southern too.
Yeah, no, of course, of fucking course. It's just like, you fucking nailed it. I couldn't have said it better myself. Either like they're like a useful idiots or they're a traitor. And that's the thing. It's like these aren't patriots. These people don't actually give a fuck about America. They just give a fuck about power and just making fucking money. And where's the money lie? It's like, okay, this all comes back to the fucking new atheist movement. This is the thing, right? I have been fucking laser focused on this shit for a long time because like, my mind was opened up to atheism and atheist thought and whatnot when it came to, like, the Amazing Atheist, fucking Armored Skeptic, all those types of people, Sargon of Akkad. And you started to see, like, a shift happen in the mid-2010s, especially with the advent of Trump. You started to see the people that actually who were atheists or skeptics or whatever actually maintain their principles and their ideals and whatnot, and actually stay as like generally like left-wing figures and whatnot. Then you start to see these people slowly but surely kowtow to the right because that's where all the fucking money is, and they start shilling these right wing conservative talking points and whatnot, and the skeptic community became divided, and there's conflict and whatnot, and with the anti-feminist movement, the anti-SJW and whatnot, and like look at where all that is today. Like fucking the Dave Rubins, the Tim Pools of the world and whatnot. That it's crazy how far back this goes, and it all leads back to who said yes to the money to spout the fucking anti-feminist, anti-SJW talking points, anti-left shit. Just like these people are the fucking enemy. It's insane to
Scapegoat
reflect on,
politics is a
Big-
very
big time.
profitable business, and I say, sorry, I'm going to swear again, Connor.
You're
But
good. I can censor it all.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
trust
this'll
me.
be-
Dude. Like you're probably not going to top as many times if I've said the F word in the past several streams since the election.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
The answer to scapegoat politics is fuck you politics.
Mhm. Yeah.
Let's have a
Yeah.
moment of silence for the death of the politics of love and kindness. Thank you.
Well, and
Yeah.
you know, I gotta say this. Like the other thing is like, even the small conservative content creators. I know I've mentioned this in passing before in private conversations. There's a content creator I actually went to Boy Scouts with, and we grew up together to an extent. And he was one of the big, like, I think he was the founder and president of the Turning Point USA chapter at Illinois State University, and he was also running with the conservative podcast scene at Cities 92.9. What Agitation Rising, leftist journalist based out of Bloomington Normal, calls insurrection radio. And this content creator, Kevin Ferris, he went to Mar-a-Lago, and yet like my first hope was, okay, let's see like where I can deal with this guy. I did 2 videos on him and went after him and trashed him a bit, but like I saw him and I was like, oh cool, we'll chill. I'll buy him a beer in the hopes of, hey, let's have a conversation, let's see what happens. Fast forward a couple weeks later, I find out he's been spreading the great replacement theory, and I'm like, well, damn, I would have been in your face if I had known that. So that's like where you gotta like don't. It is incumbent on these conservatives to prove that they're not like the Trump supporters, that they're not engaging in bigoted bullcrap. Yeah, you cannot assume anymore that there is a center, because independents, centrists, that stuff's dying. Like, yes, there are people who are persuadable, there are people who are on the fence, but they've got a sense of what they want from their representatives, from their senators, from their president, and what they want from the Supreme Court. And the thing that I really wish was being talked about every step of the way, and conservatives are very vocal about this, is it's all about the judges. Like Seth Alito and Clarence Thomas are the 2 oldest members of the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
and right now,
2 Trumps. Oh God.
Yes. Yeah. And assuming, and honestly, this is another point, always assume the worst is possible, because just because you want a good thing doesn't mean you are entitled to it without some serious effort.
Yeah.
Assuming these guys retire, Donald Trump will be in a perfect position to appoint some of the most extreme justices on the court, even more than the ones, the other 3 that he appointed, who, in my opinion, perjured themselves when they said that Roe was settled law. So it should have been like, okay, we understand you're frustrated, but listen, for the next 20 to 30 years of your life, you could be subjected to an even more conservative court with no resistance possible. Yeah. We need to be able to change the balance right here and now. And that just did not happen. That was not talked about enough.
Exactly. It's so frustrating. So many failures, so many fucking missed opportunities. And we all have to live with it. It's like why I was so downtrodden like the day after the election. Why I was just so pissed off, because there's just so fucking much that is going to change in the next few decades. It's going to be almost beyond repair. But I mean, you know, what can we do about it now except speak.
Well, we can come up with a rhetorical strategy, because none of us are big enough to sell it ourselves. We're going to need help, but if it's really good, we could sell it to other people, like promote it. I mean, not sell it, but promote it through other bigger channels. And I think the word confederacy is one that I really think needs to be resurrected.
Oh,
because
yeah.
this is the new Confederacy. This
Oh, yeah.
is America's second Civil War, Civil Rights 2.0, whatever
Or
you
my
want to
bad.
call it. We're in the middle of it. I thought it was exposed at January 6, 2021, but obviously that wasn't
Wasn't
dramatic enough. If they
Yeah.
had burned the Capitol, then maybe. But they
Yeah.
were respectful once they got inside, so I guess that made it okay. And
And they
now,
weren't
by the
even
way, Trump's
respectful
going to
then.
pardon. Trump's going to. I know they weren't, but they didn't like destroy things. They just. Well,
Yeah.
they kind of did, but you know
It
what I mean.
especially hits now because what were the Confederacy? Traitors.
Right. Treasonous, yeah, Trump trash
Yeah.
terrorists is what I'd like to call them. And
Yeah.
I don't see anybody that's, calling the bully. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with calling the bully the bully?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the best thing you can do to a bully is get the rest of the class to laugh at him, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're a joke. Like you think
Yeah,
you're powerful
mock-
because you're big
mock
and push
them,
people
yeah.
around.
Exactly.
So I think is it scapegoat politics if we blame the bullies and it's actually their fault? I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Right.
You know, that what do you think about that? Because I'm getting some pushback from, again, baby boomer liberals who don't think that we need to be bringing back the word Confederate. Like, I want to use Confederate Christian nationalism. I want to say Confederate capitalism. I mean, it just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah. I mean, like, there is such a thing as overdoing it, and you don't want to trash your voters. But I will say, like, when there's talking about, like, great replacement theory and nudging it, remind people that this ideology got people killed in Christchurch. Like when I called out Lauren Southern for mocking AOC for being afraid of what was happening at January 6th, I said you're the kind of person who would inspire a mass shooting because her ideology did. Now, whether or not she herself did is harder to gauge, but like still, it pissed her off and she yelled at me. Why? Because hit dogs bark. So I understand the impetus of like, don't trash your voters, be professional. But again, you also have to remind people like, hey, wasn't this guy like JD Vance? If he runs in 4 years, remind the people that he was calling Trump the next Hitler, and yet he was kissing the ring. RFK Jr., let's say he tries to show his ridiculous head again. Remind people that he was one of the people who went to Samoa and spread anti-vax propaganda that led to the deaths of 83 people, most of whom were children. Or remind people that he was also saying Trump was a Hitler-like figure and that his voters were bootlickers. A lot of these political figures that we're talking about that are a problem and don't care about the American people, they're saying insane things about the people that they are appealing to. Like I said this before, Fox News hates its viewers, conservative media hates its viewers. They love the cash. They are not interested in protecting the well-being of the American people. If they were, they would stop protecting gerrymandering. They would stop sucking up to the chemical companies that make our water less clean, our air less clean to breathe, and they wouldn't be constantly sucking it up to the gun lobby. So I'm not advocating like, let's be the most savage, like dirtbag leftists or whatever. But I am saying, call a spade a spade, call a bigot, and don't be afraid to say, hey, what do you think? Why do you think this is acceptable to say to people? Why did you think it was like acceptable to call Kamala Harris mentally unwell? Like that was something that Trump said publicly, and it was short-term news.
At the very least, all of that. Yes.
So it is beyond insane that we have to tiptoe around this and pretend that what is right before our eyes is something we shouldn't be angry about. There is such a thing as legitimate righteous fury, and you can overdo it, but you can also use it in such a way to say, hey, this is some nonsense. Like I have my issues with Obama, but like when he made that joke about Trump and basically turned the energy that Trump had been using for the last decade against him, he did it even better than Trump. So like I don't want people to be just trashing American voters. I don't want them to just be like brazen or whatever. But if you've got like 3 Nazis in a room and 5 other people who refuse to condemn the Nazis, you have 8 Nazis.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah, exactly.
That's very well put. All right, well, that's all I got for now. It's
same here.
I think we're good here at an hour and a half. Connor, unless you got anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah, I just will say this, and I might write an article about like some of Trump's picks. I've been going over it quite a bit.
Yeah,
Don't
just more
expect
Trump.
administrative expertise for the next 4 years. Expect anti-intellectual nonsense, and 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 there's a difference between appealing to the common man and
Yeah.
appealing to the lowest common denominator. Trump appeals
Yes.
to the lowest common denominator, and everyday American people, and I'm going to say on the left, on the right, deserve better. And that's the final thing I'd like to say. We all deserve better than this.
Big
And
time.
we need to emphasize that point. We need to be willing to criticize and call a spade, but we also have to say, hey, America, you as a country can do a whole hell of a lot better than what we've seen from the Republican Party, because it's been the same guy 3 times in a row.
Completely agree. Yeah.
Well, for Stat Pat, Stateless Patriot, and Connor, the Progressive American, I am Dieter Mint Business, reminding you that you don't get change in America by asking nicely. We will see you next week at 6:30 Pacific on Tuesday with Gavin from the Vanguard. See you then.
Hell yeah.